Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Woohoo! Good morning. Come on, here's another stage. Have it. Woohoo! My name is Leta Beam, and I co-direct Power to the Hill with this amazing woman.
Hi. My name is Wendy Shaver, and I co-direct Power to the Hill with this amazing woman.
So welcome to everybody who's here in the room. We're really delighted that you're here with us. And a special welcome to our colleagues who are joining via Zoom. Let's have a woohoo from Zoom.
We do have 12 people on Zoom. So.
12 people, yay! Absolutely excellent, excellent. So you are in for a treat today because we have great speakers here, and it's amazing to be looking out here into the crowd and seeing these wonderful active citizens showing up to be a part of democracy. So I just it's so energizing and gives me great hope for the future. So woohoo! Today we have a lot that we're going to be covering, so we have to keep on time and keep things really rolling. What we're going to do, there will be some time for questions, but if we really get into some detail, we're going to put them on the parking lot. Now, we're not going to lose any questions, but we don't have a whole lot of time for that until the very end of the program. So we're going to have lots of great speakers. We're going to be covering all the topics that we need to be out there in our communities, in our neighborhood. For us, we are in the heart of Ellison Hill because Ellison Hill is our spot and this is our home. So very exciting. But we have to keep on task, and I'm going to be the timekeeper so that we keep things moving. But questions are very welcome, and we want to hear from all of you. Some housekeeping here. We're going to go from here. We're going to have a break in just a bit so you can grab some other food or beverage. Then we will come back for the second half of the program. We'll have some role play at the end, and then we have lunch for everyone. You can take it to go, or you can just sit down and enjoy some time with your colleagues. And by the way, we have 3 groups here. 1 Vote Counts. Where are you? Woohoo! New Pennsylvania Project. Woo-hoo! And Power to the Hill, of course. All right, wonderful. Housekeeping again. If you're looking for the bathrooms, both men's and women, you head back down that short set of stairs, take a right, and they're down that hallway. If you need anything, just raise your hand. I'll be able to help you with whatever you need. And I think that we are just about ready to rock and roll. So I'm going to hand the microphone over to Michelle Mardenborough from 1 Vote Counts, and she will introduce her. You don't need one. Okay, well, our colleagues in Zoom might need you to use the microphone so that they can hear. You want to give it a try? Okay.
Let's see if they can hear us.
All right, let's do it that way. Michelle, yay!
Well, great morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Fantastic. I mean, this is absolutely phenomenal. It really shows that we care about our community. And I want to introduce our civic engagement manager, Mr. Lamont Jones. Our canvasser, our team captain, Ms. Veronica Belcher. Spread out all throughout the room, and I absolutely want to introduce my daughter, Sean, Gerry. Helping us this morning. And again, Leta, thank you so very, very much for allowing this collaborative effort as she said, that this is a community collaborative effort where we have 3 organizations as well as the Bureau of Elections with us this morning. And I want to personally thank you, Gerry and Charla. So we have Mr. Gerry Feaser, who is the director of the Bureau of Elections. Layla with New Pennsylvania Project, can you stand up as well?
I'm standing.
Ah! As well as we have Mr. James Ellison, Esquire James Ellison. School Board Representative Rosalind Copeland. Say there are so many things that you could be doing Saturday morning, but you decided to come out and join us. And that speaks volumes to who we are as a community. And if you could go to the slide, I'm briefly going to talk about, because I'm on a timer.
You are.
Why?
3 minutes. Got 3 left.
3 minutes, great. The with.
Kate, can you put the slideshow up?
What's in it for me? Why do we do what we do? And as we go door to door, many times people ask, why are you doing this? Is somebody paying you to do this? Why are you doing this? And we do it because we understand the accountability that we have to ourselves. First and foremost, people always point the finger and they say, they aren't doing this for our community. No one cares about our community. No one is coming out into our community to help do this or to help do that. The number one thing that we have got to stop doing is pointing the finger at others, leaders, and people who we want to say that it's their responsibility. It starts with us. You are accountable for where you live. We all have to take responsibility for our communities. And that's why we do it. It's because we love our communities. And we are passionate about our communities. So we want other people to get engaged and become active citizens and become involved in their communities. So the first thing that we have to do is register people to vote. We have to be accountable for our own selves. We're all leaders in here. So when we start saying our leaders aren't doing this, our leaders aren't doing that, you are a leader of self. And what are you doing within your own community to make certain that your community is, you have lights on your street, that there's not trash all over the place, and do it. That's why we do it. And what's in it for you and what's in it for me is a legacy. We want to make certain that the city of Harrisburg continues to be the beautiful city that it is. And the first thing that we have to do is to get people inspired, to encourage them, to motivate them, to get engaged, to come out and become active citizens. And that is why we're here today, to inspire you all to go door to door with us, to get people excited about the upcoming election. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to Esquire James, and he's going to talk about and why it's so important that all of you get involved. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, I have 10 minutes. All right.
I'm with you.
Okay. All right. So, current state of Harrisburg, as we see on the left-hand side now, these are estimated numbers as to the unregistered voters that we have in this town, particularly amongst people of color. African Americans, approximately 2,400 people unregistered. Latinx, approximately 2,000, and Asian voters, approximately Asian residents, approximately 476. So what's the problem? The problem is the gaps, okay? And what I mean by that is we have about 50,000 residents in this city. There's a big gap between the number of residents we have and the number of registered voters. And there's an even bigger gap between registered voters and actual voters. And that gap is due to the absence of certain voters in this city, particularly African Americans and other people of color. Next slide, please. Now, what you'll see here, Harrisburg, as I said, close to 50,000 residents. And that's been pretty stable since I've been here. And I moved here back in 1996, 1997. You'll also see over the course of the last 10 years, roughly, these are our voting patterns. Now, what you'll notice is in the general elections, and the general elections in 2012, 16, and 2020, those are presidential election years. Everybody gets geared up to come out to vote for president. And presidential elections are important because during presidential elections, you are not only selecting someone to set the agenda for the nation generally, but you're also electing someone that's going to be responsible for appointing Supreme Court justices. And we see just how important that is now and how devastating a loss we suffered in 2016 when Trump was elected, because Trump elected three right-wing judges that have thus far not been friendly to voter rights, have not been friendly to individual rights, and have not been friendly to the rights of people of color. And that is going to be a trend that's going to be felt for generations. But how do we counter that? And we have to counter that through two things. Number one, voter registration is something that you hear about every cycle. We need to increase the number of voters. But what we oftentimes forget about is that we aren't increasing the number of voters who are engaged, okay? So again, if we go back to the previous slide, if we can, we see that out of 50,000 residents in general elections, we can only engage roughly 18,000 people. 50,000 residents, we have about 65% of those people that are actually registered to vote. And of those 65%, you're only getting about 30 to 35% to come out in general elections. The most important elections for us in this town are the municipal elections. And we can see 2013, 2017, 2021, the number of registered voters are pretty much static. But look at the drop between general elections and municipal elections of the number of people who actually vote. General election 2012, we have 18,000 people. We have 7,000 people that show up the very next year to vote for mayor, for city council, and for school board, and for row offices. The same thing in 2017. In 2016, 18,000 people showed up to vote for president. 2017, only 5,000 people showed up to vote for school board, mayor, city council. Look at the 2020 election, because everybody wanted to get rid of Trump. 19,000 people showed up to vote. But in the last mayoral election, 7,000 people, okay? That's roughly 10% of this population. That means that of everyone sitting at each of these tables, one of you is deciding who leads this city for the rest of us. And that's a problem, particularly when you complain about lack of local resources, problems with our education system, problems with our roads, problems with our water system, our sewer system, which we have heard people say that they were going to fix for generations around here. Those things are not happening because only 10% of our population comes out to vote in those elections. So what do we do about that? Next slide, please. What do we do about that? How do we close this gap? Well, first of all, it takes the community, all of you here. So even though only one of you at each table is deciding who leads the city, the rest of you can do something about that. Second, our leaders. How do we engage them to engage us? Every cycle, we elect people to lead this city, but do we see them in our neighborhoods? Do we see them engaging us to come out to be proactive in deciding how our city is run? No. Organizers, volunteers, canvassers. Those are more than just names and titles, ladies and gentlemen. Those are calls to action. Without organization, without volunteers, without canvassers, who gets these people engaged? You do well going out there getting them to sign a piece of paper to get registered to vote, but how do you get them out of those houses? How do you get them to the polling precincts? And how do you educate them on the issues? How do you make them understand that if they don't vote, they can't complain about the fact that their school district has been taken over for about 20 years now? If they don't vote, they have no voice whatsoever in how COVID money is spent in this community to address their needs and address their issues. If they don't vote, not only are they giving up on their issues, but they're giving up on their children's issues because those kids can't vote. Those are the things that organizers, volunteers, and canvassers have to speak to engage people. It's not enough to register. We have to engage. Without engagement, you have nothing but numbers. Thank you.
Woo!
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Gerry Feaser. I'm the director of the Dauphin County Bureau of Voter Registration and Elections. From our office, I asked Charla to come here because we do this as a team. I mean, I've known Charla since 1992. I've worked with her off and on since 1995. So Charla is one of my closest friends. And I do appreciate her coming along with me. I do want to also thank you all for the opportunity to come here. Our office walks a very narrow line when it comes to events like this. We obviously must not engage in partisan activity, but when invited to come speak about the actual process of getting registered to vote, doing mail-in ballots, when to vote, all those types of things, that's our role. And that's one of the clear messages I received from our commissioners when they put me in this position. They told me to make sure that I do take a time to come out and engage when invited. So that is why I thank you for the invitation. So what I've been asked to speak about here is knowing the laws. And I think most of us already know a lot of this. In order to vote in Pennsylvania, you must be a United States citizen. You must be at least 18 years of age on the day of the election or before. So if someone is saying, oh, I turned 18 on May 17th, you can register them now, and then they will be able to vote on election day. The cutoff right now to register, though, is 15 days before the election. That gives our office time to process the applications, mail out the voter ID card. Does everyone have their voter ID card with them that we mail out? It's important, not because you need it every time you go to the polls. You only need it the first time you go to the polls. But what it does is it tells you where your polling place is. And if we ever change a polling place, we then reissue all the new voter ID cards and we send out postcards letting voters know their new polling location is at. So those are important. When we send those out, it's not just for fun. It's to tell you where you are supposed to go on election day, okay? You must also be a resident of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the election district for at least 30 days before the election. Now, what happens if you move within that 30 days? You can still go vote where you were last registered, okay? But I always tell people, if you're going to move, don't make it in the month before an election. Either wait until after the election or do it a couple months before the election. So move over. So on the day of the election, that's very important. So don't let anybody ever tell you, oh, I only turned 18 election day. Great, sign up, okay? So primary elections, the history of that is, if you remember in our history, there used to be really no primaries. The parties, both the Republicans and Democrats, would select their general election nominees in the smoke-filled rooms. I'm a cigar smoker, so I don't really have a problem with cigar smoke, but I understand the perception of just a bunch of, just a handful of people selecting who the party's nominees are. So one of the modifications that was made in the early 1900s was we went to a closed primary. So the party said, all right, we'll let the registered party members of our party select the nominees for the fall election. But in order to participate in our primary, you must be registered in that party. Now, back in the old days when we only had paper applications, that was, you had to get a paper application, you fill it out, and you have to send it in. Nowadays, online application, you can change your registration after every primary. So if you, you truly are an independent-minded person and don't want to associate with the party, You can be registered nonpartisan in time for the general election, but prior to the primaries, you can pick your battles. Which primary do you want to participate in? Which primary has the candidates running for the offices that are most important to you personally that you want to have a say in? Go register in that party for the primary, and then after the primary is over, change back to independent or nonpartisan. So there is a lot of opportunity now to ensure that you control your voter registration, and it's through online. You don't always have to fill out a piece of paper. Okay? So you must be registered in a party because we have what's called closed primaries. Now, in a primary, and we've had a couple of these recently, where you had a ballot question, whether it was a constitutional question, whether it was referendums, those nonpartisan voters can come out, but that's all they get to vote on, are questions that are private. So that irritates them a lot. So that's why I always tell you, you can pick your battles for the primary and then change back if you really truly want to remain nonpartisan for the general elections. The last item about there are no voting restrictions based on mental restrictions. That is true. The only way I can legally remove someone from the rolls because of Alzheimer's or other mental incapacities is if a court issues an order, and that's usually sought by the family member. I do also get letters from power of attorney stating that, you know, my father has Alzheimer's, please remove him from the rolls. That's nice, but I can't do it. So I actually have to write back to that power of attorney and say, I need the voter's signature to remove it. That has to come from the voter. So those are some of the things. I want to get back to the one point also I said about non-citizens. You know, we have a lot of legal and not legal immigrants in the area, and you will encounter them as you go through. If they tell you that they are not a citizen, and be careful about the wording, some people confuse the word citizen and resident. Yes, they're here legally, but they've not gone through the naturalization process and become a United States citizen. I tell you that not because I'm concerned about the collective, I'm concerned about the individual, because my office is the one that once somebody who is not yet a citizen somehow gets registered to vote and then accidentally may go out and vote, not realizing the nuance between resident and citizen, as they then proceed through the naturalization process, they will find they get blocked. I had to talk to a gentleman who had gone to Miami and was trying to become a United States citizen down there. They found out he had registered and had voted in Pennsylvania, and I cannot unring that bell. And he was crying to me because he was concerned about being denied his opportunity to become a United States citizen. So I want you to do as much as you can to register as many voters. And I want you to do as much as you can to get them out. I hate wasting my time preparing an election and only have 10% of the voters come out, as James pointed out. So we want to do that. But please understand, it's important. If they're not a United States citizen, do not register them at that point. Our office does go to naturalization hearings with voter registration forms, and we do get them registered. And Layla just visited my office the other day for the very same purpose. We gave you, what, 200, 300 voter registration forms.
200, you want me 200 more?
I had you 200. So, you know, we will give you what we refer to affectionately as a brick. It's a stack of 100 shrink wrap. You can have as many as you like. So, United States citizens who have relocated to our area from Puerto Rico are United States citizens.
Yes.
They can register and vote.
Yes.
No question. Okay, so I don't worry about the laws as they affect when people reverse and go back to Puerto Rico, because I have enough trouble keeping track of our laws. But they are eligible in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, no question. So this is you now. Okay, so at this point did I run over time?
did good.
She
You
did
did
good?
well.
Okay. And that time, then I want to turn it over to Lamont. Thank you also for your work.
Hello, everybody. Where's my theme music?
You want me to play Vote Baby Vote?
Yeah.
I can do it if you really want it.
No. Returning citizens. A lot of people don't know that because you have a conviction, a felony, a misdemeanor, things of that nature on your record, that you are allowed to vote. One of the first rights you get after incarceration is your right to vote.
Right.
But a lot of people, as we engage people in our community, they're going to say, hey, well, I can't vote because I have a felony. So we're going to explain to you that they can vote. And we can understand a little bit why they can vote. I need my glasses. Incarcerated individuals convicted of a misdemeanor vote with an absentee ballot. And I'm going to break all of these things down. Individuals who are under house arrest vote with an absentee ballot. Individuals being held while awaiting trial vote with an absentee ballot. Individuals on pre-release or a halfway house can also vote. Good?
I just moved-
Yeah, I just need to read a little bit. So all of those things. So if someone is in Dauphin County Prison and they have been charged with a crime and they have not been to court, they are eligible to vote. Listen to me. They are eligible to vote. And I think that this is very important because I think that I know that this is a whole new population of voters that get overlooked. And just because they don't know, I myself have a conviction on my jacket and I didn't think I could vote for a very long time. And when I found it out, I was taken aback by it. My feelings was hurt because, you want to have a voice. You want to be included. You want to make sure that you can have a say in what goes on in our community, which I think is also very important, as everyone mentioned before. Being able to vote, we have to get in our minds and to the people's minds that these elected officials work for us. It's not the opposite way around. It happens that way. Once they get in office, they disappear. Like Mr. Gerry said, that they don't come out in the community, so these are the people that we have to hold accountable. And looking at this population right here, it's a huge population in the state of Pennsylvania, not just here in Harrisburg. It's a huge population. And I think that we can get our numbers up by encouraging and informing this population that they are allowed to vote. So when we get out here into our communities, don't take that for an answer. And I think we'll get into that with role playing and stuff like that to see what we can say back to it as far as our rebuttals when a person says, hey, I can't vote because I'm convicted. So one of the things that I'm going to be fighting for and working with the Borough of Elections and some of our elected officials to see if we can get into those jails and let those individuals know. I think it's something that.
You mind if I cut in for a
Sure.
second, Lamont?
I thought I did.
I want to be very clear. When it comes to Dauphin County Prison, Charla and I have that covered, actually.
Okay.
There is in the inmate handbook a section that tells them that as long as they're not serving their sentence for conviction of a felony, they do have a right to vote. And twice a year, we communicate with the prison. It's usually the treatment specialist, and we provide them the dates of last day to vote or register to vote, last day to apply for an absentee. We go and pick the applications up, bring them back to our office, process them, process the absentees. We drive them directly back to the prison where the treatment specialist to distribute to the inmates. Once they're voted, they give them back to us. We go and pick them up. So we do work. I mean, we're literally right around the corner from the prison. So we have, under the direction and recommendation of the commissioners and the prison warden, we have already got that covered.
Okay.
But what I would say in what Lamont's talking about is, if there are residents who are serving time in another facility other than Dauphin County Prison, that's the ones you want to communicate, because I don't know what that county and I don't know where they're serving. So I don't know to reach to them. But they will, once we get absentee ballots, we will process and get them. And you know, so
Thank you.
sorry for taking your time.
Right.
Hi, I have a
Yes.
question. So my question is, what about the inmates who aren't reading the handbooks, right? 'Cause
Well,
that's-
they, again, every January and then every August, they put it on, I think it's called the inmates tablet. Okay? And they post on there our notice. Election's coming up. If you want to vote by absentee, here's how you do it. Here's when you do it. Here's who you talk to. So what I would say is if you know someone who is in Dauphin County Prison, just tell them, read your handbook, read the notices that are posted on the inmate iPads.
All right. Thank you. I'll do you one better. So let me change my phrase and I'll get out your way real quick. So since they have that cover, I still want to get inside those prisons to educate these individuals on how to vote. And I want to recognize this is the secretary. And now the new owner of the individual or state ID, state issued ID number and or the last 4 digits of their social security number. If they have neither, they will be required to bring additional means of identification the first time they go to vote. Best practice, have a list of both, right? Have them list both. So again, when we're filling out our registration form, this is part of our quality control. We want to make sure that they do have their driver's license number, even if they have a picture ID, that driver's license number is on that ID, correct? It is on that ID. This is something that is very important because when we send it over to the Bureau of Elections, they will look at it and some of these applicants can get kicked because that's not on there. And that's very important. And it's also something that was on a slide, but I want to mention because Ms. Charla wanted to make sure that I said this, so I'm gonna utilize this time to do so. One of the things I think where we can get our numbers up as well is because if you're nonpartisan, which our organization is nonpartisan, so this is good, but some people register as an independent. What that does is X them out of the primary election. So if they have, we want to encourage them, you can always change your partisanship, you know, but we want to encourage them to make sure that they select the party because if they have a specific candidate that they like, they can help them get to the general election by voting in the primary. So I think that's very important. So we want to make sure that we have that messaging when we're out in our communities. That's it.
You all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for having me. As Gerry said, he and I have been friends for over 30 years, worked together in the governor's office. And then he pulled me off the couch to come work with him. And I was tired of all the numbers, like, come on. So here I am. And I've been doing this for over 2 years now. And it's really been an eye opener for me. And it really has, it's been a privilege to work with our community. Folks call in, don't have answers to things. And because I'm now educated on the process, it's been very helpful to be able to pass on the information. So I'd like for you all to think about yourselves as, you know, this is a system, right? Voting is a system, it's a process. And the registration piece is the first clause in the system, it really is. So if it's not done properly, if you don't have all the information on this registration form that's needed, when it comes to our office, how many people you registered in a day, but the quality of the application. That's really very important. And I'm saying that in all sincerity. You'd be surprised at the number of applications we get back that don't have the right information on them. And then they, like I said, have to go through the process all over again. Before they get to the polls, thinking that they're registered, they haven't received their ID card because they forgot to put their apartment number on there. And so their ID card is in effect sitting in our bin, so, at the office. We're trying to figure out where it's supposed to go. They're pissed off at the people in the polls, working the polls. And they call up and holler at us because, you're in the process of application. So again, it's very important that as you all are walking the streets, knocking on doors, talking to people, that you really make sure that you have all of this information on these registration forms. So we want to make sure that you have the name, last name, first name. Address is important. And you'd be surprised at the people who will change their address between the time that they register and they actually get their ID cards. That's never ceases to amaze me. If they have an apartment, want to ask them, living in an apartment, and so make sure their apartment number is on the application. They also have to have some form of identification, be it the last 4 digits of their social security number or a license number. And it can also be an ID number for their, if they don't have a license. They have to sign it. We cannot process the application if it is not signed. I don't care if it's an X, it has to be signed. And if all these pieces don't match up, we're either gonna have to send them back to you or them with a letter, hoping that it's going back to the right address, and ask them to fill out their information, highlight it, and tell them to send, fill out their information and send it back to us. I think it's very important though that you realize, like can't emphasize that enough, that it's about quality, not quantity. So I'm hoping that as you all are going out, that you don't have, numbers that you want your workers to reach in a day. Yeah. That's really not the way it should be done, because you want to make sure that as you're taking those applications and registration forms to people, that they are filling them out properly. So take the time to make sure that that's done. The other piece, we talk about folks who are incarcerated. Everybody knows that I do reentry work across the state. That's my job, my other job with the Office of Attorney General. So we are now, Gerry has, allowed me to be the person who contacts the folks at Dauphin County Prison. So we make sure that they're, we send it out early enough. We've met with the treatment people over there. We met with the community organizer through another advisory committee that Brandon got me involved in. So we do reach into the prison to ensure that those who are eligible to vote. And we also do get applications and ballots from state correctional folks who are in state corrections. They have the ability to vote as well, if they reside in Dauphin County, no matter where they are. So I think that's it for me.
So the quality control.
Okay, sorry, thank you. So we want to make sure you walk the applicants through the entire form. Like I said, make certain they are a PA resident. Make certain every section, I didn't even know who's on here. Because I didn't read these slides, sorry. Make certain every section is completed. Double check the phone number and email. That's really not that important, to be honest with you. I mean, it's there. I don't want to stress
Get
out.
out the vote for us, when we want to follow up.
Okay.
Get out the vote.
Okay, so for you guys, it is registration form. If it's there on the application, we will put it in our system. But if it's something that you all require, that's fine. We're gonna double check the address and department is applicable and inspect the application before the application. So those are all things I said. Without even realizing it was on my slide.
And we do have some time for questions, so please.
If I could just add a couple of things, just
You-
building on what
we've got
Charla said
time.
about quality over quantity.
Yes.
If you really want to get people registered to vote, don't stand at the Broad Street Market. Because not everybody at the Broad Street Market that you're gonna encounter is from Harrisburg or from this community, where you're focusing your efforts on. I've produced for Lamont, and we're gonna get them to him this week, what we call walking lists. Walking lists break down each of the precincts alphabetically by street name, then chronologically by house number, so that you can start at a corner intersection and go down one row of the street. And if there's a house number that's not on your walking list, knock on that door to see if they want to register to vote. If somebody is a single person is registered at a certain address, knock and see if they need voter registrations for anyone else in the household. Do not waste your time registering people who are already registered to vote. That wastes your time going through that application. It wastes our time processing it. Focus on folks who are not yet registered. Okay? And that's why that walking list is important, because it already tells you who's already registered.
Yes.
Okay? That way you can focus your energies, because we all have a limited amount of time, and we don't really want to keep processing applications over and over and over. Okay?
Yes,
I think
thank
it's
you.
also important for you to know that there's only 5 of us that work in that office.
Well, no, wait a minute. Watch how you
Okay,
phrase
you're in
that.
the basement.
Well, no, wait a minute. We all, there's 9 of us. There's 5 who work on processing applications. We all work very hard.
David, did you have a question?
Probably already mentioned, but
Okay.
what is the determination for Pennsylvania residents? How long or how does that get back?
30 days.
30 days.
30 days after the address that they're registered. Okay, sure. Thank you.
What percentage of applications are rejected?
Well, outright rejected, 1% less. How many are duplicate? 30%.
Wow.
No.
Again, and that's why I'm saying, don't waste your time going to areas and just register. I've already, in one election cycle, I have one person who registered 4 times in a matter of 3 days. So whenever you're doing it, and that's why we really wanted to come here, because we want to really tell you, I know limited time for everyone. We all have a limited amount of time. Don't waste your time getting someone who's already registered to fill out another form, because we already got it.
You mentioned moving, canvassing in this neighborhood. I ran into a few people that are like, well, I would register, but I'm moving, or I'm literally talking to them as they're moving like that day. Should they register for their current address? If they, okay, well, if they don't know, I had a few people that didn't really know where they're going to
form.
Okay.
What's the time frame to be purged off of the list?
Okay, we don't use the word purge, we use the word cancel. What it is,
I like
what it
purge
is,
better.
purge effect, you literally were had your registration thrown out. You now just put into a canceled status, you're still in the database.
Okay.
So real quick, if you do not vote in 2 federal elections, 2 even numbered years, the 5th year, we send you a postcard saying you haven't voted to vote. If you sign that card, if you take that card and go, "Yeah," throw it away, then no activity, 3 more years after the 5th year, so it's a total of 8 years.
And so you're still gonna get letters asking you about that.
Yeah.
You're still gonna call us up and say, why am I getting this? I don't live here anymore. And
Yeah.
we're gonna tell you, until you sign that form, and send it back to us, you're gonna continue to get that. So-
All right, we have time for one more question here, Lamont.
So when people are registered and they move, like this man suggested, right? They don't have to re-register. We just have to
Change
change the
It's called a
address.
change of address.
change of address.
It's the same form, different box, check at the
Yep.
front.
Yep.
Also, real quick, because I know we already talked about primaries being very important. If you give us an application and they did not check a party, we are required to put them in no affiliation.
I've
Okay.
the quickest question in the world.
Let's hear the quickest question in the world, Dawn.
All right, what happens when someone's, I have a lot of people, especially like college students who are just not sure if they're registered when they got their license. What happens if they put in the box new registration, but it's really change of address?
All right, what I'm gonna say to you is, you and I need to talk afterward. If you're focused on registering college students, my advocacy is for them to register where they reside, where they tell the IRS their permanent residence
Yes,
is.
but what happens if they do hit that wrong box? Like even not college students, if people just think it's-
What, all they need to do is go on the Department of State website using their name on their driver's license and their driver's license number. They can look up and see if they're registered and where they're registered.
Okay, but in the case that that application comes to your office.
Well, we'll go to their home address. So if it's a Dauphin, yeah. we're-
Okay. I'm not sure that was the quickest question ever.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. And,
All my options.
all right. And
Okay, that is this, on the back of the application, which is not on the screen, there is if you're homeless, you can either use a acceptable address. We use primarily like the mission, the Daily Bread. So there are addresses at which homeless people are allowed to register, and that's where we will register them. Or on the back of the form, it actually has a map and an intersection. You can say what street intersection, where they reside, where they most commonly spend their time. But for us to give them the card, really for those homeless individuals, it's best to have them come to our office.
Yep. Thank you all. And if everyone notices up here, we have the parking lot. So if you have questions, you can pop up here and put them up there just so we know that we'll get to them at some point today. But thanks very much. I know there's not a lot of time for questions, but really appreciate you hanging in there. And Gerry, it's you're up again here with the talking to us about vote by mail.
Oh, yeah, okay. So,
Thank you, Charla.
all right, so you may have read in the paper, this whole thing is up in the air. So we are standing there as jugglers waiting for the ball to fall so we know which way to go. Right now, we are continuing to process mail-in ballot applications that we receive from any registered voter and from those who receive the annual mail-in application. So we are processing them, and if by chance the court declares that unconstitutional, we will be mailing letters to everybody saying mail-in is no longer available. You now either have to go to the polls, or if the absentee ballot application is applicable, you can submit that. Absentee has long been established. The origins of it were in the Civil War, when Civil War soldiers' ballots that were done on the battlefields were declared null and void because they did not meet the requirement to vote in person at their poll. So that was the creation of the absentee ballot. You can apply for an absentee ballot if you know you're going to be out of the municipality, or if you are ill or otherwise physically unable to go to the polls. Okay? Mail-in ballot is something that just says, I don't want to go to the polls. I don't want to stand in line. I have a work schedule that is very, up and down, and I don't know when I'm going to be working, or, I work in as a nurse, and I might have a 24-hour shift, something like that would impact your ability to go to the polls. You must first be registered to vote, and then you can apply for either an absentee or mail-in ballot. All right. When you apply for an absentee or mail-in ballot, you must give us also the completed application, giving us your either last four digits of your social, your driver's license, and then telling us not only where you're registered to vote, but especially in terms of the absentee, where you want us to mail that ballot. And a special message for our college students, friends: if you live on a dorm, you need to make sure you're giving us your correct college address, because I can't tell you how many college mail houses send them back undeliverable as address. Okay, so I'm going to tell you that it's intellectually dishonest that the current deadline is 1 week before Election Day, because given the changes in the mail schedule, there is no way practical that I get an application on the Tuesday before the election that we can process it, get it back in the mail it to you, you get a chance to review it, vote it, mail it back to me. It's not gonna happen. It's intellectually dishonest. They really need to move that date back for mail ballots. But if you have the urge to come to my office and apply over the counter, I give you your ballot, you vote it and give it back to me. I'm all for that right up until the Friday before the election, maybe even the Monday before the election. But for the mail ballots, it's intellectually dishonest to keep that application deadline 1 week before. There's just no way practical it happens. So in order to request these ballots, again, there's the application that you can take the time to mail in, or the Department of State has a website, www.votepa.gov. Just go to the Department of State website and navigate to the voter registration, mail-in ballot. And you, using your driver's license or Pennsylvania ID number, can apply for it online. It will reach out to PennDOT, grab your signature, apply it to your application. We get it. 5 minutes from the time you hit submit, it shows up in our office. So you're now immediately cutting out the mail, and the potential gets lost, crinkled, crumpled, cut in half. We've seen them all. So really, you have the ability to do online, do it online. Okay? Was there another slide to this one, or?
No.
Okay. So again, pay attention to the news. If you're going out and doing voter registration and you have mail-in or absentee ballot applications, you can submit both of those at the same time. I will tell you that I cannot give you someone else's ballot. You cannot bring me someone else's ballot. Okay? That's called ballot harvesting, and it got a congressional candidate in North Carolina out of office because his campaign did it. And that was a Republican, by the way. Just saying facts. Saying facts. So, but I will tell you that, you know, it's important to get these in sooner rather than later, because I think it's great that we're able to mail the ballots, because it gives the voters time to look at them and do research on the candidates. Am I under 10 still?
Nope, yep. 1 minute for questions. If there are questions, please.
Yes, they can also register to vote online, and I always recommend use your driver's license number to do it. Again, that captures that signature and gives it to us. Yes, Lamont.
Yeah, would you say your name was again?
Sure.
So in regards to the absentee ballot process, with this whole pandemic
Mhm.
and said illness, so is there an opportunity for people who have a, you know, just a
I have never, okay, so our office takes the application of the voter at face value. I do not reject an applicant. Now, does that make it subject to chat ballot? You say I'm not gonna be out of the community, out of the municipality on election day, and then somebody drives by and sees you out mowing your lawn, they can challenge your ballot. That's always been the case. That's not new. Okay?
Any other questions? We'll put them on the parking lot, but for now,
Real quick, how long before 18th birthday can we process it? We will any applications that are supplied to us before the primary, as long as they are 18 on or before the primary date, we will process it in time for that election and issue the voter ID card. Change party, again, it's Department of State website. Okay, just go to that website and you can either do a new registration, address change, name change, party change. And amendments, at my point right now, there are no constitutional amendments planned for this primary. Full amendment text were exactly posted. We post them at the polling places, and on the ballot is the actual the wording as approved by the Attorney General. And what's that?
it's a 6.
Well, that's the Attorney General's, but the question is worded and provided to us by the Department of State. Here's what you put on the ballot, and then they. Right. You want to talk to your state legislators and because we print what the Department of State tells us based on the law.
amendments, whether or not they're going on primary ballot, so that you can't vote on the constitutional amendment unless you're voting in the primary, because evidently you have 70 amendments waiting in the room.
Okay, primaries, when a constitutional amendment appears on the primary ballot, anybody can come out and vote. For Democrats, you get to vote on your Democratic candidates running for nomination and the constitutional amendment. Republicans get to go vote for your Republican nominees running for office and the constitutional amendment. Anybody else can vote on just the amendments, and that's it.
But they are going on primary ballot.
Yeah, that's the way the law allows for it.
All right.
I just want to emphasize that that's really important.
Mary, can you stand up and maybe take your mask off just to speak?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to emphasize that this is forward laws that we think about. They put them on amendments, knowing that they will be voted on by very few people, and then that the wording will be put in a very innocuous way. So it's just, I think anybody who's doing registration and talking to voters needs to know that this is an issue that's coming down the pipe, that evidently we have quite a backlog. They're asking.
Thank you. And then, very important point, very important point. All right. Thanks very much, Gerry. Again, Michelle, I think you're up for Layla.
That's all. Yeah, hold on.
There we go. I'm sorry. All right, skip Miss Layla. Oh, Dom's coming.
Hello, first of all, I want to introduce myself, because a lot of you in here might not know me. My name's Dom, I'm the regional organizing director at the Pennsylvania Project. 3 things about me really quick, huge Baltimore Ravens fan, Louisville University alum, and I'm super passionate about serving our community, making sure people like me get involved in the process. So
10 minutes
10 minutes, okay.
for both your parts.
Thank you. So I spent the last couple of years kind of been in the field, canvas and organizing and working with people on issues like this and like also just voter engagement. And there's a few things that really help us, one, retain volunteers, people, coming back, but also when people go out in the field for the first time, make sure they have a good experience. And a big part of that is safety. If someone goes to the doors for the first time, or they go to the doors and they have a experience that makes them feel unsafe, or they feel like they are, kind of alone in bad situations, they're not likely to return, right? And how do we make change in our communities? We have people come out one time and then never come back, or they have an experience that's bad and they feel like it's not safe to be, out and about doing this work. So it's really important as organizers, but also as volunteers, that, when we go out and we have these conversations, safety is a priority for us. And so I just want to kind of go over some of these things that really help keep us safe and make sure people feel comfortable when they're out doing these conversations. And a lot of that is tied between obviously COVID, which is, something that we've been stuck with for the past couple of years, but also just, things you can come at the door. And I've had all kinds of situations where, just people that are a little bit, maybe they're having a bad day or just a little bit overzealous about whatever it may be. And we want to make sure when people go to the doors that, they are in a situation where they're not in a bad position. So first off, one of the best things I've found in my practice as, being a leader for organizers that go out to the field and have these conversations is having a partner. It really does help people feel comfortable. If you're out and about and someone's yelling at you, they're saying, get away from my door, and all kind of crazy stuff you might hear in the field. It helps so much to have someone that you know and that you're comfortable with, that you know is on your side, that's going to stand by you if something bad does happen. And it just makes people feel more comfortable when they're going out and about, because it's kind of nerve-wracking to have conversations sometimes with strangers. And so it really just helps to, really, if you can, try to have team members. I know it's hard sometimes because we're looking to get the most numbers. It's really hard for us to have, pairs of 2 or 3 going out into the field. So if you can, try to get teams, but I also understand that sometimes that's hard to do. And in a situation where you can't have a pair of canvassers together, I try to have them at least in the same area. So if you're going to be on this street, maybe have another person over here on this street, so they're at least, a yellow or a call away where they can get there in a quick amount of time. Another thing is, knocking on the doors, especially for me, I'm super tall. I might be the tallest organizer in Central PA. When I knock on someone's door, the first thing they see is me towering over them. It can be intimidating. It might rub them the wrong way. It also might make them feel unsafe, COVID or whatever. Just, you know, if you have a conversation with someone, take a step back for a second after you knock on that door, after you initiate the first, you know, hello, how are you going out in the street? Take a step back. You don't have to be, you know, maybe 6 feet away like we did at the beginning of the pandemic, but give them some space to breathe. Personal space is important to a lot of people. We want to make sure we're not crowding people. And that helps us keep the conversation in a way where they're not trying to rush out of the conversation because you're making them feel uncomfortable or unsafe or whatever it may be. So that's just a tip that I always say. Another thing is, I think I see Michael in the back. Shout out to Michael Fisher. I used to work with him at another organization. And Michael is super organizer. He told me a lot of what I know actually. And so one of the first things he told me was to avoid going inside people's homes because you do get people who, you know, are well-meaning and they just want to invite you to have tea and talk and, you know, we want to know so much about you. And while that's well-intended sometimes and, you know, appreciated, it also is an unsafe practice because you have on the flip side of that coin, people who aren't well-intentioned and because you're in a really bad position if you're now inside someone's home, you're vulnerable, they have the advantage, they know that home, they know what's in that home, you don't. So, you know, I know you might have that sweet grandmother or grandfather figure that wants to invite you inside, but I generally advise people to not go inside homes and to also avoid enclosed areas. So another one of these things is like awnings or like porch areas that are closed off where you can't step away and be away from the situation, avoid. Elevated decks even. If you have to walk down 2 flights of stairs to get away from the situation, you're probably putting yourself in somewhat of a vulnerable position. So I generally advise to people go out in the field, try to avoid situations like that. Stand in the front stoop. If you're gonna be, you know, even on the back of the house, maybe stand, you know, in Harrisburg, there's a lot of like little alleyways near the side of the house. Stand maybe on the side of the alleyway so you can just easily get away if there was a situation, which hopefully it doesn't happen, but there was a situation where it turns kind of sideways. And then the last thing, and this is just good practice in general, especially in today's world. Like I said, you don't know exactly who you're encountering or what their intentions may be. But if someone's been hostile with you or, you know, engaging in just harassment or behavior that rubs you the wrong way, you know, all of us as human beings have our lines that we don't want crossed. And there's things that you can't say to people, right? And you can't do to people. And so, you know, we may have clipboards, but we also have, you know, feelings too. We don't want to be harassed, we don't want to be insulted. And me personally, there's certain things that people just can't say to me that I'll be okay with. But you also have to remember, you're in a professional environment, you have a job to do. There's other things to focus on than getting in arguments with people. And you don't want that to escalate, right? Because at what point are they going to stop? Will it become physical, whatever it may be, it's not worth getting engaged in. And so if you go to ask someone, are you registered to vote? And they say something obscene or crazy to you, let them go on. I mean, and how reasonable is that person anyway? You're just asking them a simple question and they respond with something obscene or insulting or offensive. Ask yourself, is that someone you really want to equate to? Is that something you want to, you know, give energy towards? So that's generally my approach to that. While I understand, you know, not wanting to allow someone to talk to you a certain way or cross that line, it's just really not worth it. You don't know who you're encountering. It's not worth getting involved in that. Before we move forward, and I think I have one more slide on this. Any questions, any comments on this section at all?
You talked about the little old lady, grandfathering type guy who comes to the door. It's 6 degrees out and windy.
Yes.
He doesn't want to stand there with the door open.
Yes.
Any thoughts about how to handle that?
Like I said, I really generally just advise to avoid it. Is that 1VR, we're putting your safety at risk. You can always come back on a sunnier day. They're not comfortable staying in the cold. If you catch them at, you know, I know Gerry here recommended not going to the Broad Street Market, but if you catch them at the Broad Street Market, for example, and you know they're like, oh, it's too cold to be out here signing, I just don't have time for it. We'll just try to catch them another day. We encounter these people often being in the field anyways. So if you lost them that day, that doesn't mean you lost them forever. It's not worth putting safety at risk. That's just my advice.
What advice do you give to people that are out canvassing and they encounter folks who call the police?
Oh, that's a good question. Thank you for that.
Right.
Well, So I actually have had this happen to me many times before. I'm 6'5", I'm a young black man, and I don't always dress like this. Sometimes I have a hoodie on, sometimes, whatever the situation is, someone might see me and think, whatever. And it's not my problem what they think, but I do have to deal with the consequences, right? And so, what I advise, especially for the color, is really and police interaction often escalate something that shouldn't even happen, right? But try to keep the situation low, because you may have, first of all, officers a lot of times don't know the law as well as they should. And so you come into situations where they believe you're soliciting, you don't have a right to be doing what you're doing. Long things, like things get crazy, you end up in handcuffs, you realize you're being arrested, and that can be corrected later on, you contact the lawyer. But is it really worth going through all of that, for a situation where you can de-escalate if possible? So my advice generally is, if you encounter police, try to answer the questions to the extent of your comfort. Obviously, if you're not doing an illegal activity, you're just asking people to register to vote, for example, you're not committing a crime. You don't technically have to even identify yourself. You don't have to have a conversation with them. You can just walk away. But ask yourself, in that situation, do you think that will de-escalate the situation? Or do you think that officer might then go on a power trip and then start to harass you? And now you're having a harder day than you could have. So my advice, and I can't really tell you what to do here because I do understand both sides of this coin, but as best as you can, and to the extent of your comfort, try to cooperate so you can just get through that interaction and go on with your day without having the hassle. Address it later. Your organization can then contact that department later and even let them know what the situation is, and let them know, hey, we're going to be doing this work in this community. And so maybe they're less likely than to harass you going forward. Thank you for that question. You have a question?
Is there a particular organization could give them identification?
Yes, absolutely.
Which they can then show to anyone who's showing up. That'll help a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. ID cards are good, like a good thing. It doesn't stop the swatting calls as much, but if someone is just questioning what you're going in the community, they think you're like casing houses or whatever, having an ID badge can help too. And I want to go to the next slide because I always run out of time.
Yep.
All right, and then so just the covert precautions, like I said, we've been dealing with this for a few years now. It's kind of something that we're stuck with for now. I know all of us are ready to get past it, but until we are like through it and done, some of the best covert precautions to get us through and be safe in the field. One is vaccinated. I'm not going to get into all the best to protect yourself as far as when you're out and having contact with numerous amounts of people. And think about how many people you're encountering while you're out in the field. You're sharing writing utensils, you're sharing a clipboard back and forth. It's just the best thing to do to protect yourself. Same way you have car insurance, home insurance. It's like an insurance policy on your own body and your own being. Always wear a mask. I should put my mask up right now, honestly. But in general, just wearing a mask, not only for your own well-being, but for the people that you're talking to, is best practice. Also, some people will not have a conversation with you, particularly because you're not wearing a mask. And so if you want to increase your contact rates and you want to have the most amount of effective conversations, you talked about if it's cold and someone doesn't want to have that conversation. I've had doors where if they are like looking at you and they see your mask out a little bit, they're like, pull your mask up, or this conversation is going to be over. So that's a good one as well. Wear gloves. I personally don't do this, but it's something that you can do. As far as, like I said, we're sharing utensils, we're going interacting with a bunch of people. It just keeps you safe and keeps you from further spreading COVID and making people sick. Sanitizer in your team. Social distancing. We talked a little bit about that as much as possible because they are being circulated.